The situation reached its peak absurdity when Karen arrived for her scheduled 6 a.m. administrative pool time to find a line of 7 neighbors waiting for their turn, complete with towels, pool noodles, and what appeared to be a portable sound system playing aquatic-themed meditation music. "What is this?" Karen demanded, clutching her pool testing kit and laminated schedule. "Community pool time," replied Mrs. Patterson cheerfully, wearing a swimming cap decorated with plastic flowers. "Young Marcus helped me sign up for the sunrise water meditation slot. Isn't this wonderful? I haven't been in a pool since 1987. Karen watched in horror as the 83-year-old woman carefully lowered herself into Princess Sparkles, which now sported a small solar-powered fountain that Marcus had somehow installed overnight. The unicorn's cheerful face seemed to mock her as Mrs. Patterson began what appeared to be synchronized arm movements. "This isn't what I intended," Karen muttered, but her protest was drowned out by the arrival of the 6:30 a.m. water aerobics group, led by Janet Morrison, and featuring what appeared to be half the residents of Building C. "Karen," Janet called out cheerfully, "thanks so much for establishing this community program. I had no idea how much I missed aquatic exercise. We've been talking about getting one of those bigger pools for the courtyard." The words hit Karen like a splash of cold pool water. Bigger pools, more community aquatic programming. Her simple property rights dispute had somehow evolved into a campaign for expanded recreational facilities. She felt control slipping away like water through her fingers. But the final straw came when Marcus Chen approached her with a clipboard and an expression of earnest civic responsibility. "Mrs. Whitmore, the Pool Activities Committee has been reviewing your management protocols, and we think you've done an amazing job establishing basic safety standards. We'd like to offer you the position of Head Pool Safety Coordinator." Karen stared at him. "Head Pool Safety Coordinator? It's an elected position," Marcus explained solemnly. "4-year term, renewable by community vote. You'd be responsible for chemical testing, usage scheduling, and conflict resolution. There's even a small stipend from the HOA Emergency Fund." For a moment, Karen felt a surge of vindication, recognition at last, an official position that acknowledged her expertise and dedication to community welfare. Then she noticed the fine print on Marcus's clipboard. Position requires candidate to maintain active pool usage logs, conduct weekly water safety seminars, and coordinate with newly formed Sunset Meadows Aquatic Recreation Committee regarding expansion of community water features. "Expansion?" Karen's voice cracked slightly. "Oh yes," Marcus replied with teenage enthusiasm. "The success of this pilot program has inspired several residents to propose a comprehensive aquatic facility upgrade. Mrs. Kim is researching above-ground pools, and Mr. Ramirez thinks we should look into a community hot tub." Karen felt the world spinning around her. What had started as a simple assertion of property rights had somehow transformed into a campaign for her own personal aquatic nightmare. She imagined herself trapped forever, testing pH levels and mediating splashing disputes in an ever-expanding network of community pools. As she watched Mrs. Patterson perform what appeared to be underwater ballet in the tiny unicorn pool, Karen experienced a moment of rare self-reflection. Had she been wrong? Not about the property rights. She was still certain the pool's placement violated at least 3 subsections of the HOA covenant, but about what victory actually meant. "I need to think about this," she told Marcus, backing away from his clipboard like it contained a binding legal contract. "Give me 24 hours to consider your generous offer." That evening, Karen sat in her apartment, staring out at the courtyard, where neighbors continued to enjoy their communal pool experience. Children laughed, adults chatted, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the gentle hum of Marcus's solar fountain. For the first time in months, Sunset Meadows felt like an actual community rather than a collection of rule violations waiting to happen. And somehow, Karen wasn't sure if that was exactly what she'd wanted after all. As the sun set over the tiny pool, one question lingered. Had Karen Whitmore finally won the battle for community compliance, or had the community somehow won Karen? The answer, like the mysteriously pristine chemical balance of Princess Sparkle's water, remained tantalizingly unclear. Karen Whitmore stood waist-deep in what was clearly a child's inflatable pool, her oversized sun hat dripping with chlorinated water, as she scrubbed her armpits with a loofah while three horrified neighbors watched from their kitchen windows. The tiny unicorn-shaped pool, barely 4 feet across, groaned under her weight as she announced to anyone within earshot that this was now her designated bathing facility, according to HOA regulations she'd apparently memorized overnight. "This is a public amenity," she declared, splashing dramatically as Mrs. Chen's 6-year-old daughter Emma pressed her face against the sliding glass door, watching her pool being commandeered by the neighborhood's most notorious busybody. "I pay my dues, and I have every right to utilize community resources for personal hygiene." The absurdity had begun 3 hours earlier when Karen discovered the little pool sitting innocently on the Chen family's patio. She'd been conducting her usual morning patrol, clipboard in hand, measuring tape at the ready, when she spotted what she considered a clear violation of the Sunset Meadows HOA covenant. The pool, according to her interpretation of Section 4.27, was positioned 0.3 inches too close to the property line. But something else caught her eye, a small placard she'd never noticed before, tucked behind the community mailboxes, declaring all water features within the development to be shared community amenities subject to equal access protocols. Karen's eyes had lit up like a child discovering candy. She'd photographed the sign, cross-referenced it with her personal copy of the HOA bylaws, and within an hour had crafted what she considered an airtight legal argument. "Ma'am, that's my daughter's pool," David Chen had protested when Karen first appeared at his door with her folder of documentation. "We bought it at Target last weekend. Location, 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 Mr. Chen," Karen had replied, adjusting her reading glasses with the smugness of someone who'd found a loophole in the matrix. "Your pool is positioned on what the original development plans classify as transitional common space. That makes it community property, regardless of who purchased it." David had tried reasoning with her, explaining that the pool was clearly within their patio boundaries, but Karen was already in full HOA president mode. She'd been elected to the position 6 months ago after a contentious campaign that mostly involved her threatening to report various violations she'd been graciously overlooking for years. Now, as she continued her bizarre aquatic protest, Karen felt vindicated. She'd spent years being dismissed, ignored, and eye-rolled at community meetings. But this was her moment to prove that rules meant something, that she wasn't just some crazy neighbor lady with too much time on her hands. "I'll be taking my evening constitutional here at 7:30, she announced, wringing out her washcloth, "and my morning meditation bath at sunrise. I trust you'll all respect my scheduled pool time." The rubber unicorn's plastic eyes seemed to judge her silently as Karen settled deeper into the water, completely oblivious to the growing crowd of neighbors gathering to witness what would later be known as the Great Pool War of Sunset Meadows. Karen's retaliation was swift and comprehensive. By 6 a.m. the following morning, she had installed a small pop-up canopy over the pool area, complete with a folding chair, a card table for her administrative materials, and a hand-lettered sign reading "Pool Manager on Duty. Please check in for usage approval." "She's lost her damn mind," muttered Tony Ramirez, watching through his blinds as Karen performed what appeared to be morning calisthenics beside the tiny pool, her fluorescent pink tracksuit visible from space. But Karen's masterstroke was the pool usage log she'd created overnight. Written in her meticulous handwriting, it detailed every imaginary infraction she'd observed over the past week. Improper pool entry technique observed, unauthorized flotation devices detected, and most creatively, excessive splashing violates community noise ordinances. "Mrs. Whitmore," David Chen approached her station with the exhausted air of a man who'd spent 3 sleepless nights researching property law. "I've spoken with our attorney. What you're doing is theft." Karen looked up from her logbook, where she was carefully recording the morning's pool temperature and chemical balance. "Mr. Chen, what I'm doing is community service. This water feature was being grossly mismanaged. The safety implications alone. It's a kiddie pool. It's a potential liability nightmare." Karen stood up, her chair scraping against the concrete. Do you have any idea what the insurance ramifications could be if someone were injured due to improper pool maintenance? Have you filed the appropriate safety documentation with the county health department? David stared at her. For a pool that holds 30 gallons of water, water is water, Mr. Chen. Drowning doesn't discriminate by volume. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Emma Chen, who had finally been allowed outside to see what had become of Princess Sparkles. The 6-year-old took one look at Karen's elaborate pool management setup and burst into tears. That lady stole my pool, Emma wailed, pointing an accusatory finger at Karen. She put weird stuff in it, and now it smells like a swimming pool. For the first time since this began, Karen felt a flutter of uncertainty. She'd been so focused on proving her point about property rights and community governance that she hadn't really considered the human element. This was just a little girl who wanted to play in her pool. But before Karen could process this revelation fully, Emma's older brother Marcus arrived on the scene. At 16, Marcus had inherited his father's engineering mindset and his mother's Irish temper. He took one look at the situation and made a decision that would escalate things beyond anyone's imagination. Fine, Marcus announced loudly enough for the growing crowd of neighbors to hear. If this pool is community property, then I guess we should treat it like community property. What happened next would be talked about in Sunset Meadows for years to come. Marcus Chen, with the methodical precision of someone who'd spent too many summers building elaborate water balloon artillery, began setting up what he called community pool access protocols. Within an hour, he created a sign-up sheet for pool time, established a democratic voting system for pool temperature preferences, and most diabolically, organized what he called community pool activities that included synchronized swimming practice, water aerobics classes, and something ominously listed as experimental pool chemistry workshop. This is ridiculous, Karen protested as neighbors began actually signing up for pool time slots. You can't just democratize pool management. Why not? Marcus replied with the innocent smile of a teenager who'd found the perfect revenge. It's community property, right? Shouldn't the community get to decide how it's used? By evening, Karen found herself the pool manager of an aquatic facility that now had a waiting list, scheduled programming, and a newly elected pool activities committee that didn't include her. As she sat in her folding chair, watching Mrs. Patterson lead what appeared to be a water-based book club discussion in the tiny unicorn pool, Karen began to suspect that her victory might actually be a defeat in disguise. By day 3, Karen had established what she called her aquatic wellness routine, complete with a laminated schedule posted on the community bulletin board and a plastic storage bin containing her pool accessories, various bottles of bubble bath, a floating cup holder, and disturbingly, a small television in a waterproof case. This is insane, whispered Janet Morrison to her husband as they watched Karen perform what appeared to be water aerobics in the tiny pool, her arms flailing in movements that belonged more in a psychiatric evaluation than a fitness routine. She's been in there for 2 hours. The Chen family had tried multiple approaches to reclaim their pool. They'd contacted the HOA management company, only to discover that Karen had somehow gotten herself appointed as the interim property manager during the previous week's emergency board meeting, a meeting she'd called herself when she declared the current management unresponsive to resident concerns. Emma Chen pressed her small face against the window again, watching the strange lady splash around in her unicorn pool. Mummy, why is the crazy lady taking a bath in Princess Sparkles? Don't call her crazy, sweetheart, Michelle Chen replied automatically, though privately she was beginning to question her own sanity. How had their quiet Tuesday evening turned into a siege situation involving their daughter's $25 inflatable pool? Karen, meanwhile, was conducting a phone interview with what she claimed was Channel 7 News, though David suspected it was actually her sister calling from Nebraska. Yes, this is about property rights and the fundamental breakdown of community governance, she announced loudly, apparently unaware that her voice carried across the entire courtyard. When HOA boards ignore their own regulations, Residents must take direct action to preserve order. The breaking point came when Karen introduced her pool maintenance protocol. Armed with a telescoping net and various chemical testing strips, she began what she called professional water management. "Excuse me, what are you doing to my pool?" David had demanded, marching outside to find Karen dumping what appeared to be half a bottle of chlorine into the small pool. "Our pool," Karen corrected, not looking up from her chemical testing. "And I'm maintaining proper sanitation standards." The pH was completely out of balance. "Frankly, I'm concerned about what you've been exposing your child to. It's been sitting here for 3 days, with you in it." Karen paused, fixing him with the look she typically reserved for people who dared to question her authority. "Mr. Chen, are you implying that my personal hygiene practices have somehow contaminated this water feature?" The argument that followed drew neighbors from 3 adjacent buildings. Karen, now standing in the pool wearing a floral swimming cap and what appeared to be her late husband's swim goggles, defended her position with the fervor of someone protecting the Alamo. "I have documentation proving this pool's classification as community property," she declared, waving a soggy folder above her head. "I have photographic evidence of the original placement violation, and I have witness statements confirming that proper notification procedures were followed before implementing shared usage protocols." "What witnesses?" demanded Sarah Kim from 4B. "Well, I witnessed myself filing the proper paperwork," Karen replied without missing a beat. "And Mrs. Patterson from 6A confirmed that she received my memo about the new pool schedule." "Mrs. Patterson has dementia," someone called out. "Mrs. Patterson has lived in this community for 12 years and deserves our respect," Karen shot back, though she was beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt about her strategy. That evening, as Karen finally climbed out of the pool for her dinner break, she discovered that someone had deflated her floating cup holder, standing there dripping in the courtyard. Surrounded by the deflated remains of her afternoon beverage station, she realized this was war.